Are search results good enough, or are they goog enough? AJ Cohn with an epic article calling out why big brands win despite complete irrelevancy, how Google uses click data in terms of the rankings. We talk about the reviews update. Is this the last one ever? Will Google ever let us know again? Maybe not. And the state of generative AI, we released our study and found how many people in your organization are using AI without you even really knowing about it. That and so much more in this episode of the SEO Weekly. Check it out. Welcome back to another episode of the SEO Weekly, where queries are weird, advice is controversial, and everything depends. I'm your host, Garrett Sussman of iPullRank, and every week I cover everything going on in the world of SEO. We're talking Google updates, blog articles, conferences, podcasts, communities, SEO Twitter, and sometimes SEO LinkedIn. You name it, I'm on it. If you're into this stuff, please leave us a comment, subscribe to the channel, give us a like, genuinely appreciate it. But there is a ton to cover this week, so let's dive in. Okay, so last week when Google announced that they were rolling out the 4th November core update of the year since I last was doing the SEO Weekly, they also subtly put in the blog post that they are rolling out, starting as of Wednesday, a new reviews system update. And not only that, this will actually be the last time that they notify us because the review system update is going to be ongoing. Now, what's important and it totally worth the clarification is this is a specific type of review, which are expert reviews that are looking at in-depth, comparisons or lists. These aren't the third-party reviews that you'll see on Google or on Amazon or any of these, third-party vertical specific review sites. These are the in-depth written out reviews. Now, what's interesting is typically the people who write these reviews have interesting incentives, whether it's the brand writing a review about themselves, or it's a brand writing about competitors, or it's a media publisher or affiliate marketer that's trying to drive their own traffic to those products to get, payment fees for those referrals, the affiliate marketing. So there's always this agenda with these reviews. Google has been doing these product review updates over the last couple of years. Last year, remember, they did it right before Black Friday. It's going to be interesting to see how significant the fluctuations are of these results. We're also seeing, in terms of the search generative experience, a lot of these, the outputs based on the queries are pulling in from these reviews. So how will this change the incentives of the types of reviews? And will we see different types of winners and losers? Or will it just be a little more ambiguous and we won't see a lot of volatility? I'm very curious to keep my eyes on this. What have you seen? Let me know in the comments. I'm very curious what your perspective is. Okay, so obviously Google continues to try to get into the e-commerce game and be a source for search of e-commerce over, say, Amazon. They rolled out a really interesting feature. So if you type in like shop deals in the search query, they actually created a new page based on different categories that you can click into through navigation and get specific deals leading up to the holiday season. What's fascinating about this is it's pulled from deals and promos from the shopping graph, right? So anytime you put a deal on your website or you manage it in your merchant center, it will be pulled in and potentially used on these pages. The interesting thing is it feels organic. There are sponsored results, ads, but a lot of it is organic, and it's not clear why something would show up for specific deals. Not only that, are we seeing specific products showing up, but above the products, we're seeing links to organic links to retailers. So if you put in like electronics or sports, you'll see like Best Buy or Walmart appear. How do you earn that is, I don't know. I'm trying to figure it out, but it seems like a huge win for those brands ahead of the season. If you are a brand, definitely look into your merchant center and look at the deals that are available, because they're going to be showing up with special, annotations on like tags on these products with 30% off with your deals that you're offering. It's a great opportunity for brands, But it's going to be interesting to see who the winners and losers are of this rollout, especially from an organic perspective. Speaking of Google Shopping and Google Ads for that matter, had an awesome interview this past week with Susan Winograd. We talked all about advertising, what role Google Ads might play in the search generative experience when that's rolled out. So a lot to think about as an SEO who might also do advertising, thinking in the grand scheme of things. Actually, she has a really great explanation of how we're in this weird sort of place in terms of getting super granular and controlling with our ads or just letting Google do its thing. I'll let her take it away. Susan?
Yeah, so I kind of have a couple rules that I've come up with when it comes to how to handle Google Ads at this point. One of my big ones is that you have to start deciding what you do and don't want to try and control. It used to be that we had to sort of control everything with Google because it just wasn't very smart, right? So it's like, so we had to control like match types and, ad copy. And like we had to really specify everything before we launched a campaign because we're like, Google will have no idea. So we have to tell it what to do. Now we're kind of reaching this phase where our role in that has changed, where you can launch much more generally than you used to and kind of spend more of your time looking to see what Google does and retroactively telling it to stop doing that thing, right? So there's less upfront work. There's kind of more pruning along the way for some parts of it. And other parts, I spend like almost no time having to do anything with it. And it might have taken a long time before. So where your time goes is different. I don't feel like it's easier to manage necessarily. It's just that I feel like I spend more time in certain aspects of it.
So it really makes you think if you have your hand in SEO and in Google Ads and you're working together with both teams, have that perspective in terms of what you're trying to target from both an organic perspective and an actual ad perspective. There's so many different schools of thought when it comes to that. Check out the whole interview with Susan on Rankable. It's on the iPullRank and the link is in the descriptions. I can only imagine the look on Morty Oberstein's face as he's working on this, deep dive into the October core algorithm update and the results and what the impact is. And he's about to publish on SEMrush. And the next thing you know, Google's like, yeah, here is our November update. So even though some of the results and the analysis that he did is moot in the context of significant fluctuations, he brings out some great points, which are, the question is whether the October update is a reversal of the August core update. Glenn Gabe points out, the idea that there's these dual systems and sometimes they impact each other. Like we saw that the October core update actually had a bug for Discover, which is like a different system. The helpful content systems update is playing around in between, as well as the spam. So things are bouncing around off of each other. Ultimately, Google is trying to, kind of balance out the good results, right? Based on quality rater guidelines and making sure that it's doing what it's intended to do. Whether or not these core updates are rolling out bam, bam, bam are independent of each other or reversals or, trying to do something different. We don't know, but usually it just means there's a lot of volatility. For instance, in the November core update, Joy Hawkins, who's a local SEO expert at Sterling Sky, points out that we're already seeing the November update really impact local search, which is kind of a different system. Like local search results are different than, general results, as we see with search generative experience. All that is to be said is like returning to the perspective of our own Mike King and Zach Chahalis when it comes to what you should do when there's an algorithm update. Well, I'll let them share their perspective.
Nothing. A lot of people, when they hear algorithm update is come, they're so quick to like start changing things right away. But what a lot of people don't understand is that Google's a software company and is governed by the same things of any software company. And so in the case of Google search, it's not just one team. There are numerous teams that compose the Google search team. And so when there's an algorithm update, think of it as like a release for any other software product. And that release may be composed of a variety of components from various teams. And so they roll it out and then they may roll back pieces of it because they're not happy with how it worked. So I always tell everyone, wait at least 2 weeks before they start making any decisions. Wait until 2 weeks until you even start doing any real meaningful analysis of what's happened, because more often than not, those dips may be temporary. And so acting too quickly, like jerking the wheel back and forth, you may end up doing something that messes up your site's performance rather than fixing it. So I say do nothing until you get enough data to indicate that's truly what happened.
There you go, Zach. We're going to turn on to you, and I'm going to add one more element. What if you are in the midst of deploying something and then Google lets you know that the algorithm update is happening? What do you do if you're actually rolling out new content and then you find out the algorithm hits? Do you stop or do you keep going?
I wouldn't stop. I mean, in theory, hopefully you're not pushing something that's extremely nefarious or poorly implemented to begin with, but that would probably be the biggest factor I would see of that having a negative impact. But it shouldn't stop you from evaluating your site or improving your site. And I think, kind of tacking off Mike's point, I mean, some of these algorithm releases from Google are taking weeks to push, right? So you can't completely pause your entire business to account for something like that. I mean, you should be operating as if the improvement or the change you're going to make is going to be an improvement to your site, to your user experience. So it shouldn't have a negative impact in theory, unless you're doing something wrong, in which case you need to be rethinking a lot of things about your business strategy to begin with before you worry about pausing a site release during a algorithm push.
So there you go. Nothing. Do nothing. Wait. Although, if we're always getting new algorithm updates, should you always be waiting? Probably not. But with the major core updates, give it a second, let something breathe, see what happens, and hopefully you don't see too much damage. Anyway, what happened to you? Did you see any sort of like last few updates? Have you seen a lot of fluctuations? Let me know in the comments. So the biggest story, in my opinion, in the world of SEO this week is not about algorithm updates. It's not about the reviews update. It kind of is this narrative that we've been following over the past year on the SEO Weekly. And frankly, I can't do the whole story justice in one episode. This is more of like a NPR crime drama podcast type of thing, but I'm gonna do my best. It starts with more and more information coming out of the major antitrust lawsuit against Google from the US government. The DOJ released more documents, including the life of a click, which highlighted a long-standing controversy of whether or not Google uses actual behavior, click behavior, user interactions with the SERPs and websites to determine rankings. And Cyrus Shepard went through some of these slides, as well as a bunch of other SEOs highlighting, yeah, it seems like from these documents, Google does in fact use this information, this click-through user interactions to inform if you're likely to click an article, that's going to impact whether you rank up or down. Obviously, there are major considerations and reasons that this would impact things. Specifically, it highlights some of the issues around why you see a lot of times major, massive brands, the biggest culprit that gets called out is Forbes, ranking for topics that they seem to have no sort of relevance for. This was called out in one Twitter X post about CNET ranking for multivitamins, CNET being a tech company. Now, Danny Sullivan, search liaison, responded to that saying, I'll pass that along. Yes, big brands, there's a concern that they shouldn't be able to rank for just about anything. And this is the case across many brands. Now, AJ Cohn dropped a bombshell epic blog post that I highly recommend you read. And this is what I'm trying to cover here, because he goes in depth in terms of his perspective as to why these brands rank, for things they absolutely shouldn't, as well as some, all the other considerations. deep dive, it's Google enough. He talks about search results. Part of this narrative are search results declining? Are people depending on Amazon and TikTok and even appending Reddit to their search queries to get better answers? And there's a lot of reasons as to why, AJ calls out US News. He calls out Forbes. He calls out CNET. He calls out a whole range of different publishers that are ranking for all these high queries that they shouldn't. Should the Verge be ranking for mattresses, things like that. He addresses the issue in terms of the incentivization. So I don't envy Google. It's an impossible job to rank the best content with so much information out on the internet, especially when there's business incentives to rank highly. You think about all these companies like Forbes, like New York Times, that have these affiliate publications, or even major multimedia publishers, which Glenn Alsop has covered in depth, covering a range of different verticals. Their incentive is for affiliate marketing, for people to click on their links to buy the products, and then ultimately they get a fee for referring that product. And it's a massive market. So Google has a problem. They're using these click interactives. People know these brands. They trust them. There's no issues. They don't understand some of the deceptive practices. AJ references how Forbes is a pay-to-play contributor, how you have Trustpilot, which is a review system that includes incentives for businesses to pay and use their product to get their negative reviews reduced, and then incentivized to actually generate more reviews so they can keep a quality ranking. All of these factors come together to explain why you would see some of these different websites ranking highly for topics that they shouldn't. Now, is this something that Google's going to solve? AJ goes on to talk about issues around advertising placements and how the organic search results are further and further down below the fold. How, search generative experience is ultimately going to impact this. He talks about the risks of AI generative content. There aren't even a lot of solutions for this, because if Google is depending so heavily on brands and user interactions beyond just like relevance, and the incentivization isn't changed, like it's hard to get someone to actually write good content that doesn't have something that benefits themselves. How are you supposed to find this great quality content? Now, AJ does have some suggestions around, reweighting the way these interactions work if they are using this click data, to reduce the ads, which I doubt Google will do. Change up the UX. He talks about the issue of removing indented results. And so you see different results from the same publisher in SERP results, which creates a lot of cognitive strain. It's a complex issue. And it just highlights that if you have the resources, if you have the domain authority, if you have the brand authority in real life, it's not fair.
This game is rigged, man.
It's not fair for the small guys. And I don't have a solution, but we all depend on search. Will that change? We're not even talking about how ChatGPT plays into the equation. But ultimately, I can't recommend enough going ahead, looking at some of these slides from the DOJ and how Google is evaluating, interactions to do rankings, and then read through AJ's article to get a sense of the problems that we face. We're not prescriptive. We don't necessarily have a solution. We're just identifying that, are these results Goog enough? What do you think? One more little compliment to the AJ Cohn piece was written by Bernard Huang on LinkedIn. Bernard, who's actually joining us on Rankable in a few weeks, is the co-founder of ClearScope. And what he talked about was this idea of having a content rubric. Yes, Google results aren't fair, and they're actually depending more and more on the quality rater guides, the people who are looking at the results to adjust the algorithm to make sure that they represent everything that we want search results to be. So Bernard says, take these different aspects that are objective and subjective and create a rubric to analyze your own content. Is it perfect? No. Is it super helpful as like a North Star guide in terms of like content creation using these objective and subjective metrics to try to go in the right direction? Absolutely. Check out his post. He has a nice visual infographic that you can use as well. And check out ClearScope. They have like a lot of those objective metrics to help you evaluate your own content. Okay, that article with AJ Cohn was a beast. I hope you get a chance to enjoy it, but you've got to be kidding me. So you remember the article that we covered by The Verge last week on alligator parties and content goblins and the SEO hit piece in terms of the industry, like ruining the internet? Well, guess who's hiring for an entry-level SEO with 10 years experience, and they are looking for a Lamborghini-worthy salary? Yeah, The Verge. They're hiring on SEO jobs. You got to see this listing. It's ridiculous. No, Nick LeRoy with his epic troll job dropped this like an April Fool's Day prank on Twitter this past week. And, there were definitely like some initial reactions to it being like, oh my God, I can't believe The Verge would do this. But once you see the actual listing by Nick, it's pretty hilarious. It's an epic troll job. That kind of did The Verge wrong. Obviously, it's not accurate, but go read it. It's fun. Good job, Nick. You got us. You got us here at the SEO Weekly. So there's nothing more frustrating than doing a little research on a local business, specifically a business that has locations all over the place, going to their landing page and being like, there's nothing here. It's a ghost town. I'm not learning anything new. I am wasting my time. Don't be like that. Actually, a lot of brands are getting better at providing really helpful, useful information on these individual local landing pages. And ultimately, they're both a great SEO play and a huge customer service play, which is covered in this article by Miriam Ellis on the Moz blog for local SEO. Super helpful, comprehensive post where Miriam breaks down over 20 different types of content that you don't necessarily have to, but you could include on your local landing page for each of your locations. She also answers a bunch of Q&A, but she goes through like this whole list of everything from obviously ones like your contact and hours, having some images, having some CTAs, having your EEAT, expertise, experience, trustworthiness, and authoritativeness signals on there, as well as like reviews, how you fulfill that ecosystem, guarantees, you name it. Super helpful piece if you work in local SEO or you have different businesses all over the place. Check it out. For those of you who watch the SEO Weekly, you know how obsessed I am with generative AI, and you might be rolling your eyes, but you know what? It impacts the world of SEO and content, and you absolutely have to be paying attention. I am super hyped to announce that we have published our Q3 2023 State of Generative AI report. In partnership with Market Muse, we interviewed and surveyed over 480 plus people asking their opinions on generative AI. Are they adopting it at the organizational level, team level? How are they using it? So many questions, so many insights. Some of the key takeaways that I think are worth pointing out are: A, 70% rate generative AI created content highly, like at 4 or above of 5 out of 5. 2/3 of companies endorse generative AI use. Conversely, 2/3 actually lack a formal policy on generative AI. Only a quarter have trained their employees on AI, and just 20% have implemented these tools organization-wide, while 60% have individual usage, meaning you probably have employees using generative AI, and if you don't have any sort of policy, or you haven't talked about it, or you don't have any training, they're going rogue and you probably don't know about it. Anyway, if you are interested in this report, you can see some of the high-level statistics on the blog post that I wrote, as well as download the full guide for free. Just give up your name and your email. No, but seriously, it's a great report. Super proud of it. Really interesting insights there. And then if you want to learn more about how to use AI in your content, when it's appropriate or when you should be using subject matter experts, on Thursday, I'm doing a webinar with the Director of Content Strategy at iPullRank, Amanda Milligan. We are covering balancing authenticity and efficiency, those best practices in using AI and subject matter experts for content. We're going to go end to end, what types of content are appropriate for what types of people, when you should use AI, how that whole process looks. I'm super excited. It's going to be Thursday, November 16th at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Definitely register, because even if you can't make it, we'll send you the recording with all the insights. I'm hyped. And you can ask me questions. We can talk content and AI and SEO, all those fun things. And Amanda's fantastic. I'll see you there. Do it. Links in the comments or in the description. Obviously, I love generative AI, and the past year has been insane for OpenAI and ChatGPT. Since last November when it was released, they've been updating. Enterprise, integration with DALL-E, the code interpreter, the ability to analyze data. Well, earlier this week, they hosted their very first DevDay in San Francisco and released a whole bunch of roadmap plans and products coming out, which are very exciting, including a GPT-4 Turbo that's going to be faster and combine all the tools, the ability to create your own personalized GPTs, longer context windows, so the large language model remembers so much more than it did before, and a ton of other really interesting quicks and quirks and beeps and bops. Actually covered it in depth over on the AIPRM blog by Aaron Johnson. So fantastic post to just see what is coming, because ultimately you need to consider adopting generative AI. It's the future. It's not a matter of if, but when. We're there. Yes, there are limitations, but now it's more and more up to date. It's including more internet content and the knowledge graphs there. It is becoming more powerful. And remember, we're really just at the beginning of this stuff. So learn what you can. Don't be intimidated by it. In fact, if you have any sort of questions about it, Brittany Muller, who was on the Rankable podcast last week, fantastic interview, by the way, on the ethics and considerations of large language models, released part 2 of her beginner's guide to large language models. So she covers so much more insights in terms of data sets. The part 1 was just going through all the basics. Highly recommend you read her deep dive and educate yourself, because it's going to impact everybody's job in everybody's industry in some capacity, one way or another. So there was actually an interesting article that was the overlap of SEO and AI from Elise Baudet, talking all about structured data and its role with generative AI. Basically, Elise lays out how important it is to continue to add structured data to provide more context of the relationship between your content and other entities, semantic relationships, any details about the information, to make it as easy as possible for Google to use machine learning to understand your content and get it right. Structured data is the best way to do that. It's so much more than just getting rich results. So you get, stars that show up in the SERPs, or, FAQ, which doesn't really, show up anymore. If you have any other questions about that, you can actually check out an interview I did with Dave Ojeda of Schema App a while back, talking about the value of structured data beyond the rich snippets. Very cool interview there. Actually, let's see what Dave had to say on the subject.
Schema markup is two sides of the coin. What it is, it's your rich results, which is all the bells and whistles, your rating stars, used to be FAQs, how-tos, everything else like that. So those are something which give you, a real ROI that you could speak to. Now, on the other side is going to be your entity understanding. So the key with schema markup, in a nutshell, it's schema markup provides the ability to describe an entity or entity which exists on a page, how they relate to each other, how they relate to other entities within the site, how they relate to the internet as a whole. And usually that is through like external vocabulary such as Wikidata, Wikipedia, where you use that to hone in on that major schema class. So, it's both. Now, as we know, as marketers and, working with clients, is selling the rich results, the ROI, it's a lot easier than doing entity relationships. But I will tell you, over the last 2 years, there has been a change in terms of even the clients coming to me, and some of the bigger clients, e-commerce and some of the big brands that come to me. They're like, Dave, we know how to do rich results. We're doing it. We got a team, but it's like, we don't think that we're really pulling together our entity relationships correctly. And we need you to come and do an audit. Give us some insight to how we can do that and really pull everything together, because we feel and we see a need, and by the conversations going on with Google, that this is the time to do that. Or, we needed to do that 6 months ago, a year. Like, what do we need to do to get ramped up?
Thanks, Dave. So check that out. Check out that interview and read Elise's article. Super insightful. That's it. Another episode of the SEO Weekly in the books. So many like deep dive, big picture conversations happening, articles worth reading. Such fascinating stuff. I hope you get a rise out of it. Like, because I love this stuff. I think it's so interesting how volatile, up and down, everything is always going. We'll get another episode before the Thanksgiving break. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this, please share it with someone who might get a kick out of it. Subscribe to the channel. Give us a like. Leave me a comment. I genuinely appreciate it. My name is Garrett Sussman of iPullRank, and I will see you next week.